I tried to think of some examples of cognitive dissonance. It's not always that easy to see. And I think that a lot of the cognitive dissonance really did come from being either positive or negative about either religion or science. Art is easy to be a little more neutral about. You either enjoy it or you don't enjoy it. It's such a subjective experience that you don't really have to have a strong opinion on it, or that opinion just really relates to your own self. Whereas with science or religion, we're talking about ultimate truths. So your opinions on that really do have to be consistent with something if you actually think that something is true. And I think it's a big mistake what we've done now to sort of separate these two and say, oh, it's okay to have any religious beliefs that you want. And then when you go and you do science, your mindset changes completely. So a lot of people have very strong cognitive dissonance. They will go to church or synagogue or whatever on the weekend, and all of these kind of weird historical notions and surreal, unprovable notion of God is there. And then when you go back into the laboratory, you just sort of ignore those things and you think, well, that's just my comfort zone. We treat religion like it's, buttered toast, and it's something that we eat and we consume because it makes us feel better, because it reminds us of our childhood. Maybe it's nostalgic. It makes us feel like we're part of a community. But when we're dealing with notions of ultimate truth, then that clashes very directly with what you would want from a community. Because ideally, your community would be open enough that it would just include the people that you want to interact with socially, and not necessarily the people that have the exact same beliefs about things that nobody can see or feel. So I guess the other example of cognitive dissonance, and I thought about this sort of political opinion that I've heard a few times, and politics is absolutely full of cognitive dissonance. It's just constant. And I think what's so frustrating about the left and right is that often the criticisms of the opposite side are perfectly valid, but instead of accepting those criticisms and changing your view and trying to modify it, people will just outright deny those criticisms, even if they're provable. And a lot of people in politics don't even look for proof. I've heard so many times when people say, well, there's no evidence for that. There's no evidence for that. And there is evidence. They just haven't looked. So that's a kind of cognitive dissonance too, when you just say, no, that evidence isn't real. How do you know? You don't know that. Did you go there? Did you experience it? Because if you didn't, then you can't know that. You literally can't know. So a lot of us really, really want to be sure about the things that we know, even though they are unknowable. And that's just really, really a frustrating thing about being human. And cognitive dissonance is also one of those frustrating things about being human. But it also helps us navigate the world and interact with different situations as we need to do. But when you look at your real philosophy of life and you're trying to find some kind of ultimate truth or just a really basic truth about a simple thing, then that cognitive dissonance is really going to cause some harm. Because it's making you believe lies that even you yourself in a different situation know isn't true. So this example that I thought of is a lot of people believe that the reason a lot of impoverished people commit crimes or do bad things is because they're poor. So if we use that logic, you would say then, well, okay, you start to examine it a little more, and then usually what happens is they start to explain that people are oppressed in this system and they're impoverished in this system. And then you realize, why is it happening? Why do we have this system where there's so much poverty? And usually the answer to that is that there's rich people. So the rich people are hoarding the money for themselves. Well, that's not a very nice thing to do. If it were really true that poverty causes crime, then the rich people should be doing good things, but they're not. If the rich people are causing the poor people to be poor, then the rich people are also bad people. So what caused them to be bad if it wasn't poverty? So the poor people are bad because they're poor and the rich people are bad because they're rich? Or maybe being good and bad doesn't have anything to do with poverty. And not all rich people are bad or not all poor people are bad. So we're giving an excuse to the poor people, saying, it's because you have no money. Rich people caused all your problems. But meanwhile, rich people are also doing bad things. So what's their excuse? Because they do have money? So we're kind of blaming money for both sides of the things, but we're not really looking at what underlying morals that we have in humanity that might be leading us to that situation. So it doesn't really make any sense. That's an example of cognitive dissonance. If you believe that poverty causes crime and you still believe that rich people are doing bad things, then what's their excuse if it's not poverty? Clearly, it can't be both. So there's lots and lots of examples of those kind of things, and I think the problem is it's really easy to find the cognitive dissonance in other people's opinions, because when you listen to someone, you're comparing what they said here, what they said there. And so you're able to kind of point out these ways like, wait, weren't you hypocritical about that? Didn't you say that you believed something else earlier? And we all do that. So the thing is to discover that in yourself. That's what I found was so helpful in writing a book. And I think that's also really helped me a lot in making this podcast, because it's forced me to listen to myself and to make sure that what I'm saying is actually consistent. Because naturally, I will start to find patterns in how things work. And if I'm saying in one case, this pattern is clear here, and then later on, I realized, oh, wait a second, I wasn't consistent with that. And I actually contradicted what I said earlier.